People are going to call me crazier and wonder why I did what I did. Deception. Stop dealing in deception with people. When I met Ashley, I was openly polyamorous. I slept with women. I was upfront about it. I told her about my anger issues. I told her about my felony. I told her about prison. I told her about being controlling, violent, everything. I gave her every opportunity to walk away. I gave her every opportunity to be honest with me. But instead, she chose to constantly deal in deception. And I'm tired of it. Period.
At 4:40 in the morning, most of Rockford, Illinois was asleep. But Rayshawn Smith wasn't sleeping. He was staring into his phone camera, recording a message that would chill investigators. "People are gonna wonder why I did what I did." Those words, posted to Facebook, while somewhere in the darkness, 38-year-old Ashley Hardin would never see another sunrise. What happened in those early morning hours, and what Smith felt compelled to explain to the world, reveals a case that shocked even seasoned detectives. Because sometimes the confession comes before anyone even knows there's been a crime. Before we continue, our thoughts are with Ashley Hardin's family and loved ones. Ashley was a devoted mother of 3 whose life was taken far too soon. This story is told with the utmost respect for her memory and with hope that sharing these events might help others recognize warning signs of domestic violence. Ashley's children have lost their mother, and nothing can ever bring her back. We remember her not as a victim, but as a person who mattered, who was loved, and whose absence leaves a void that can never be filled.
For fucking black church. When I met her, she had just stopped fucking a pastor in his church. In fact, she's fucked with like 4 or 5 pastors here in Rockford. And it's not just her. The Rockford black church is corrupt as fuck. They protect these predatory pastors. They give them money. All these fucking pastors around, they got all these goddaughters and young light-skinned girls that they taking on trips to other countries and to all these concerts and church this and that. And you stupid people in Rockford pay the time.
Ashley Nicole Hardin was 38 years old, living in Rockford, Illinois. She worked at Ecolab, a local business where she was known as a reliable employee who took pride in her work. But more than anything else, Ashley was a mother. She had 3 children who were the center of her world. Friends and family described her as someone who would do anything for her kids. She was the type of mother who made sure her children felt safe, who checked on them at night, who worried when they were out of her sight. Ashley wasn't perfect. None of us are. She'd had relationships that didn't work out, made choices she probably regretted. But those who knew her best remember a woman who was trying to build a good life for herself and her family. She was known for her caring nature, always willing to help others when they needed it. Ashley had that quality that made people feel comfortable opening up to her. She listened. She cared. She tried to see the good in people, even when maybe she shouldn't have. In the summer of 2022, Ashley was working to move forward with her life. She had ended a relationship with Rayshawn Smith, a man who would prove to be far more dangerous than she ever realized. July 23, 2022. Saturday morning in Rockford, Illinois. Ashley Hardin was 38 years old, a single mother raising 3 children. By all accounts, it started like any other weekend morning. But at 3:45 a.m., something was wrong. Ashley and her son woke up to a smell that didn't belong. Gasoline, sharp and unmistakable, cutting through the summer air. They looked at each other with that instant recognition that something wasn't right. They stepped outside to investigate. There, in the driveway, sat a white car. Ashley had seen this car before. She knew who it belonged to. Her son watched as his mother approached the vehicle, then she turned back to him. "Go inside," she told him. He did what his mother asked. He went back into the house. He waited. But Ashley Hardin never followed him through that door. When the sun came up, Ashley's son called the police. His mother was missing. The officers who responded to that call found evidence that told a disturbing story. 3 milk jugs, all containing gasoline. One of them had been emptied onto the house itself. The clock was ticking. Daylight meant witnesses, meant people asking questions. Whatever had happened to Ashley, the person responsible knew they were running out of time. Police began looking into Ashley's personal life, her relationships, anyone who might want to hurt her. The investigation quickly focused on one name, Rayshawn Smith, 46 years old, Ashley's ex-boyfriend. Smith had a history with law enforcement. In 1995, he'd been convicted of home invasion and served time in prison. This wasn't a man who was new to violence, but investigators had no idea that Smith was already broadcasting his confession. While they were gathering evidence, while they were building their case, the killer had already told the world exactly what he'd done. At 4:40 a.m., while Ashley's family was frantically searching for her, Rayshawn Smith was sitting somewhere with his phone. He opened Facebook. He started recording. The video was posted directly to Ashley's own Facebook page. Think about that for a moment. He used her account to broadcast his confession. It was a final act of control, a way to make sure his voice would be heard through her profile. In the video, Smith looked directly into the camera and said the words that would haunt investigators. "People are going to wonder why I did what I did." His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was explaining why he chose one restaurant over another. He called it deception. That was his reason for everything that had happened. According to Smith, Ashley had deceived him somehow, and this justified what he'd done to her. But then Smith said something that revealed who he really was. He claimed he'd been honest with Ashley from the beginning about his flaws. He said he'd told her about his anger issues, about his criminal past, about wanting to be with other women. As if being honest about being dangerous somehow made it acceptable. "I gave her every opportunity to walk away," he said into the camera. As if the responsibility for his violence belonged to her. As if she should have known better than to trust him. At 7:45 that morning, just 3 hours after Smith posted his confession video, police in Roscoe received a call about a body behind the Ecolab building. The same building where Ashley worked. The same building where Rayshawn Smith was employed. Ashley Hardin was found lying behind her workplace. She had suffered severe trauma to her head. The violence inflicted on her was devastating. 2 spent bullet casings lay nearby, along with several unused zip ties. Someone had come prepared. A projectile was recovered from underneath her body. The evidence painted a picture of a planned execution, not a crime of passion. The location wasn't random. Smith had chosen Ashley's workplace deliberately. Maybe he thought it would take longer for her to be found there. Maybe it was another way to control the narrative, to make sure she was discovered somewhere, connected to her daily life. By 11 a.m. that same morning, police located Rayshawn Smith in the 300 block of North Main Street in Rockford. He was sitting in his vehicle when they found him. Inside that car, officers discovered a scene that told the complete story of Ashley's final hours. There was blood. Ashley's blood. A machete lay on the seat. Zip ties, the same type found at the crime scene. And Ashley's medication, taken from her home. Smith was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated unlawful restraint. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His own confession video, the physical evidence, the timeline, all of it pointed to one conclusion. But this case was far from over. Because sometimes, even when justice seems certain, the story takes turns that no one expects. As investigators worked to build their case, the evidence painted a clear picture of premeditation. This wasn't a crime that happened in the heat of the moment. Rashawn Smith had planned every detail. The forensic analysis revealed a timeline that chilled investigators. Smith had brought gasoline to Ashley's home, not just to commit murder, but to cover his tracks afterward. He'd emptied one of those milk jugs onto her house, trying to destroy any evidence that might link him to the crime. The zip ties found at the scene and in his car showed that Smith had intended to restrain Ashley. This was about control, about making sure she couldn't fight back or escape. The machete wasn't just a weapon, it was a tool of terror. But Smith had made one critical mistake. In his need to justify his actions, he'd recorded a confession and posted it online. That Facebook video became the most damning piece of evidence against him. His own words, spoken in his own voice, admitting to exactly what police suspected. Digital forensics experts analyzed every frame of that video, every word Smith spoke. They verified the timestamp, confirmed it was posted from his device. There was no denying what he'd done or when he'd done it. In October 2022, 3 months after Ashley's murder, Rashawn Smith stood before the court and made a decision that surprised no one who'd followed the case. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder. There would be no trial, no lengthy legal battle. Smith admitted to killing Ashley Hardin, but even then he couldn't face the consequences of his actions with dignity. He waived his right to be present at his own sentencing. Even at the end, he was taking the coward's way out. On December 16, 2022, Judge Jennifer Clifford delivered Smith's sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge's words were measured but firm. Smith would never walk free again. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, paying for what he'd done to Ashley. For Ashley's family and friends, the guilty plea brought a measure of closure, but it could never bring her back. They remembered a woman who had loved her children fiercely, who had worked hard to provide for them, who had tried to see the good in people, even when it put her in danger. The case sparked conversations about domestic violence throughout the Rockford community. How many other women were living in fear? How many other Ashley Hardins were out there, trying to leave dangerous relationships but not knowing how to stay safe? Ashley's children were left to grow up without their mother. No sentence could undo that damage. No amount of justice could fill the void in their lives. They would have to learn to navigate the world without the woman who had protected them, who had made them feel safe. The community rallied around Ashley's family, but the trauma would last far longer than the headlines. Domestic violence doesn't just claim the life of the victim. It damages everyone who loved them, everyone who depended on them. Justice seemed served. The killer was behind bars for life. The case was closed. But this story has one final, unexpected chapter that no one saw coming. December 25, 2022. Christmas Day. Families across Illinois were gathering for the holidays. Children were opening presents. People were celebrating with loved ones. At Stateville Correctional Center, Rashawn Smith had been in his cell for just 9 days. 9 days since his sentencing. 9 days into what should have been the rest of his life, behind bars. At 7:15 that morning, Correctional Officer Robin Jones made a discovery that would shock the Illinois Department of Corrections. Rashawn Smith was dead. He had fashioned a noose from a torn bedsheet and tied it to the air vent in his cell. Smith had taken his own life, rather than face the decades of imprisonment that lay ahead of him. Even in his final act, he was exerting control, choosing his own ending, rather than accepting the consequences the justice system had imposed. But Smith's death revealed something far more troubling than just another prison suicide. An investigation into the circumstances surrounding his death uncovered a pattern of negligence that should disturb every taxpayer in Illinois. The investigation found that Smith's body had been clearly visible from outside his cell. He wasn't hidden. He wasn't concealed. Any correctional officer walking the halls should have seen him immediately, but it took hours for his body to be discovered, hours during which he hung there, while correctional officers who were supposed to be monitoring the inmates failed to do their jobs. The investigation focused on two officers. Lisette Ontiveros was supposed to conduct regular checks on inmates throughout the night, but she didn't. Instead, she falsified the logbook, writing down times when she claimed to have completed rounds that she never actually made. If Ontiveros had done her job, if she had walked the halls when she was supposed to, Smith's suicide attempt might have been stopped. He might have been saved, forced to serve his sentence instead of taking the easy way out. Officer Robin Jones discovered the body the next morning, but only because her shift was starting. There was no emergency response, no urgent discovery. Smith had been dead for hours. The Illinois Department of Corrections completed their investigation and referred the matter to facility administration for proper review and appropriate action. Officer Ontiveros agreed to attend additional training. That was it. More training for someone who had already proven she couldn't be trusted to do the basic requirements of her job. Even in death, Rashawn Smith's case revealed systemic failures that go far beyond one man's crime. He had confessed to murder on Facebook, been sentenced to life in prison, and then escaped justice through his own final act of violence. And the system that was supposed to monitor him to ensure he served his sentence had failed completely. Ashley Hardin's story doesn't end with her killer's death. Her memory lives on in the 3 children she left behind, in the co-workers who remember her dedication, in the friends who knew her kindness. But Ashley's death also serves as a reminder that domestic violence can escalate quickly and without warning. The signs aren't always obvious. The danger isn't always clear until it's too late. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, please know that help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. They're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to wait until you're in immediate danger to call. Sometimes the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when someone tries to leave. That's when the need for safety planning becomes critical. Reach out to professionals who understand these situations, who can help create a plan that prioritizes safety above all else. Ashley's story matters because she mattered. She was more than the circumstances of her death. She was a mother, a daughter, a friend, a person whose life had value far beyond the headlines. If this case has affected you, if you want to learn more about domestic violence resources in your area, please take the time to look them up. Share them with others. You never know who might need that information. Thank you for listening to Ashley's story. If you found this video helpful or informative, please consider subscribing to help us continue telling these important stories with the respect and attention they deserve.